The hum of the engines had been steady, comforting even, as Flight 739 cut through the sky at 35,000 feet. Most passengers sat lost in their own worlds, headphones on, screens glowing, books open, or simply sleeping with heads leaned against the cold windows. C-21C was no different at first glance. A young woman sat there quietly, her hair tucked back neatly, her hands folded tightly in her lap as if holding onto something unseen. To anyone passing by, she looked like just another ordinary traveler, blending into the rhythm of the cabin. Nobody could have guessed that within the next hour, her life, and the lives of everyone on that plane, would be changed forever. It began with a sound no passenger ever forgets. A jolt, a grinding shudder, then the sudden drop that yanked stomachs into throats. The aircraft pitched slightly, a tremor rattling through the fuselage, and the calm chatter was instantly replaced by cries, questions, and the rising panic of dozens of voices colliding in the narrow cabin. The intercom buzzed once, then cut to static. Flight attendants froze, exchanging glances that betrayed what their mouths refused to say. Something was wrong, very wrong. The woman in 21C clutched the armrest, her knuckles pale. Around her, people gasped, prayed, and whispered in fear. Then, over the noise, a voice cut through like a blade. Deep, commanding, and unmistakably military. From the front row, a man stood tall, gripping the seat back for balance as the aircraft jolted again. His words carried not panic but urgency, spoken with the authority of someone used to life or death moments. "Who can fly this aircraft?" The SEAL captain bellowed. For a second, the cabin seemed to freeze. Dozens of faces turned, wide-eyed, searching, hoping someone, anyone, would answer. But silence filled the air, thick and suffocating. Passengers shook their heads, flight attendants stammered, and children began to cry. The pilots had not emerged. No one knew if they were conscious. The realization began to ripple through the plane, they might be without anyone at the controls. And in that silence, in that collective paralysis, the young woman in 21C felt her chest tighten. She wasn't just another passenger. She wasn't just a quiet soul trying to disappear into the hum of a commercial flight. She had once spent years in training, long hours in simulators, sweat dripping onto flight manuals, her heart synchronized with the rhythm of propellers and turbines. She had been a pilot before she walked away from it all, before life pulled her into different battles she never expected. She had buried that part of herself, convinced it was gone forever. But now, as the captain's demand hung in the air, she realized the truth: the sky had never let go of her. Her mind raced, heart pounding against her ribs. Fear clawed at her. What if she wasn't ready? What if she failed? What if she took the controls and led them all to disaster? She hadn't flown in years. And yet, the alternative was unthinkable. No one else was standing. No one else was moving. Seconds mattered. Slowly, almost unwillingly, she unbuckled her seatbelt. The click of the latch seemed to echo louder than the screams. Her legs trembled as she stood, her hand brushing against the seat in front of her for balance. The SEAL captain's eyes locked onto hers, scanning her face, questioning without words. She didn't speak loudly, only firmly enough for him to hear. "I can fly." For a moment, disbelief flickered across his hardened features. Then, like a switch flipping, resolve settled in his eyes. He nodded once and gestured for her to follow. The aisle opened before her as passengers leaned back, their expressions a mix of desperation and fragile hope. Every step toward the cockpit felt heavier, as though the weight of 200 souls pressed against her shoulders. The cockpit door loomed ahead, guarded by uncertainty and fear. When the captain pushed it open, the scene inside confirmed their worst fears. The pilots were slumped over, unconscious, their faces pale, oxygen masks dangling uselessly. The panels blinked and screamed with warning lights, alarms shrieking into the confined space. The plane had been left wounded, gasping for control. She slid into the seat, her hands trembling as they hovered over the controls. Memories flooded back, checklists, emergency drills, the hum of a simulator she once lived inside. She whispered to herself, grounding her thoughts, reminding herself that she had done this before. The captain stood behind her, his steady voice an anchor in the storm, relaying calm to the passengers outside while trusting her with everything. Minutes blurred into an eternity. She fought the stick, corrected the descent, silenced the alarms one by one. The plane resisted her at every turn, heavy, wounded, incooperative, but her training, buried deep within her, began to rise like muscle memory returning from the shadows. Sweat streamed down her forehead, her breath sharp and shallow. She remembered the faces behind her, the children crying, the old woman clutching her rosary, the silent prayers of strangers who now had only her to believe in. The storm outside raged, clouds bruised the sky with darkness, turbulence tossed the aircraft like a toy, and lightning painted the windows in fleeting flashes of white. It was a gauntlet of fear, every drop and rise threatening to shatter her resolve. More than once, doubt roared louder than the engines. She wanted to quit, to scream that she wasn't enough. But each time the thought rose, she pressed it down with the memory of why she once chose the skies, because flying had never been about control. It had always been about trust, about courage, about giving everything when there was nothing left to give. When the runway finally appeared through the rain, glistening like a lifeline stretched out in the night, tears blurred her vision. The descent was rough, uneven, the wheels screeching against the wet asphalt with a force that shook every soul aboard. But the plane held, the wings leveled, and then, impossibly, they slowed. They stopped. The cabin erupted in sobs, prayers, and applause, the sound of hundreds of lives rediscovering hope. She sat there, trembling, unable to move, tears spilling onto her cheeks. The SEAL captain leaned forward, resting a hand on her shoulder, and whispered something only she heard, "You just saved us all." She didn't respond. She couldn't. She only sat there in silence, her chest rising with broken breaths, realizing that a piece of herself she thought was gone forever had come back when it mattered most. And in that moment, the quiet woman in 21C was no longer invisible. She was the reason hundreds of hearts would beat another day. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. Your support helps us keep sharing true stories that remind us of courage, hope, and the strength within ordinary people. One special request. Comment below with one word, courage, if you believe that heroes can be found in the quietest places.